Hello everyone, this is Bradley. Today this is a quick dumb tutorial, which I think is kind of whatever. The entire whole point is that people ask about a question about how to get different colors or different shaders on the Boolean. So in this case, I have a sphere. I changed that to the bounds with a sphere, and upon cuttings, the other part is showing a different shaders compared to the original one. So the question is how to do this. There are many different ways. I come up with ways that use geometry nodes. Where's my geometry nodes? Yes, I come up with a way that use geometry nodes, but later I learned some methods which does not use geometry nodes. I think I will just cover all of them. So basically the method that I know, so within the edit preference, there is a add-on which is called a bool tool. So you can enable the bool tool. Once you enable that, you will be able to find that tools in in edit. Why it's so confusing, I have no idea. And what you do is just put a difference, and you will cut and add materials. But this is not procedural because I lost my sphere already. So let's Control Z. Let's get my sphere back. Okay, so this is the issue of this bool tool. It's kind of interesting though. Maybe you want that, but yeah, no. So there is another method. So let's firstly disable my geometry nodes. Use the normal Boolean modifier. Everything is just the same color. But a tricky part that people told me is that if you add a second socket, so firstly let's our sphere already has its material which is called cyan, and in our second socket let's add the cyan. Then immediately you can transfer the materials into that. So this is the second method. It's kind of awkward because you have to add multiple sphere. What if I'm adding multiple materials? Like multiple booleans, like add one more spheres within the collections? I have no idea. I guess you have and change that to collection. What will happen if so? I have no idea. Because if the sphere gets different materials, like get the blue. Actually, let's just try. Within the collections, just the Boolean, and gets add another material which is called the blue, and set the entire into collections Boolean. Then it works as well. But definitely it's kind of awkward that you have to add multiple materials. Actually, I think this tutorial should stop here because I think this is really a good method already. If you move on to geometry nodes, and by the way, our version is 3.0, I don't think it will run as good as what it has been doing right now. But I guess we will find out. So let's just create a new cube and disable our original cube. Actually, let's just delete the cubes. So now we have 2 cubes and 2 sphere. Let's go to noding. Firstly, let's add a red material so that it shows red, and it goes to the modifier. Let's add a geometry nodes. So for our geometry nodes, first thing that we need to do is obviously to do a Boolean. We need a second object to take the geometry. So I need a sphere. Let's just name that based on the color. So one is cyan, the other is blue. Okay, and in our cubes, let's paint these panels. Let's select our blue objects and take the geometry into the place. Where's my geometry nodes goes? There's no Boolean happens. The reason is that the issue of original and relative. Actually, this is kind of very confusing. For details, I think you have to look at the menu. But I do not really buy their definitions. The short answer is you need to use relative. Actually, you can actually conclude about what actually you see. So let's just hide all this kind of Boolean. If you take the original, our sphere just goes to the center. I don't actually know why exactly it's doing so. It's not how I should understand the original in my opinion. But if you also use relative, it just goes to the relative location to our cube. Sounds kind of actually annoying, but anyway. So once you have the Booleans, you do not have the color. And just to prove one thing, let's add another materials and you tweak the blue and you find it's not working the same as what we previously see with the normal Boolean modifier. I'm not sure if this is a limitation or bug or whatever other things. I'm afraid this is not being realized actually. So probably a feature that hasn't been implemented, and I don't know, maybe you should bug report this. Anyway, and definitely other options does not change anything about this issue. So if I'm using geometry nodes modifier to do this kind of work, how am I supposed to get different colors on the Boolean? Well, there's a method. It's not a general method, but you get a kind of idea. So let's take the attribute proximity, and we need to take the geometry nodes into the targets and outputting a distance d. Finally, we're going to compress. If you are not sure about distance d results, you can always look at the spreadsheet. If you know what you're doing, usually you do not really look at the spreadsheet, but sometimes just for whatever, for fun, you can actually read the spreadsheet. So now we're outputting a distance. Most of distance are 0. Why 0? Because this is the part which is Boolean. The resultant geometry has basically 0 distance with our sphere because they are touching each other. But the other part, like this face, and this face, is not touching to our sphere. So from the sphere to that place, the distance might be 2, 1, 3, 4, 5, whatever. So you get kind of idea. Once we get this, I'm just going to compare, attribute compare. And I'm going to take this, compare with the float. So distance d, if it's greater than d, then I'm going to take d. Then we will see there's a yes and a no. Okay, the d has been converted from the float number. If I disable this original, it's a float number which determines the distance, but now it only gives yes and no. So when you have such kind of yes or no, you can always use that as a mask. Actually, yes or no is a mask. So take a material assign, and if you do not assign any materials, if you assign a material, it will actually overwrite the material that you have originally. But if you put a mask on top of that, then you keep the original material, but only overwrite the materials based on the mask that you have. This is, we're working with 3.0. Did I actually mention this already? Anyway, but let's see, it's not actually working. So weird. Why? The reason is that this is also another issue with this attribute proximity. You are not going to use faces. You're going to use points. And this is the result we're getting. So there's also a kind of issues. Some limitation with these kind of tiny places. This is due to actually when you compare, there's actually a little bit of threshold. So actually, compared to greater than, there's a better method which I think is equal, and take the threshold down to 0.001 or maybe a little bit higher. I don't know. Actually, I think this is just to know that I think giving equals is better than greater than. This is my opinion. And of course, you can always invert all this kind of mask, but you kind of ideas. I'm just showing an example. So what if I have multiple objects that I need to Boolean? I think I'm just going to take this into a group node. So let's just Control G to take everything into group. So now I have multiple materials. So let's jump out. Let's just take the Boolean color. Boolean color. And I think I'm just going to keep adding. Actually, I can converge these two Booleans into the same. My tab is not working. Let's go to the get group and use this basically the same targets so that I can delete the geometry ones. I hate this. And put the Boolean colors into place. So if I have a second object that I need to get a color, then just get a cyan. Actually, I don't think this is a good method anywhere. And within the color, Jesus Christ, I have to go to edit group and put the materials And I guess at some point you would like to expose these D informations into the group input as well, but I'm not going to do this. This is just anyway. So you get a kind of idea. I don't think this is a good method, because if the more Boolean that you have, the more color you have, then the more issue that you have. But I guess you do not really run all these kind of different materials for each kind of Boolean. So I guess it's still a nice method. So I don't know, it's just a sudden thought, and I certainly think it might be interesting if people would like to know. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial or whatever. I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.